Welcome to I Am Creative, the podcast where we embrace the boundless world of creativity. I'm your host, Hala Citron, here to guide you on a journey beyond the traditional boundaries of art. Whether it's how we dress, how we speak, or how we connect with the world, creativity is at the heart of every moment. Join me as we explore the endless possibilities, celebrate our imperfections, and unleash our creative potential. Ready to breathe in inspiration and breathe out limitations? Let's dive in and meet our inspiring guest for today. Hello, everybody. Okay, let me get rid of this. Sorry. I am just getting used to all of this. Okay, there we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the space. My name is Hala Citron, and so happy that you are here. So I want to introduce my inspiring guest. I'm going to read a little bit about him, and then we're going to bring him up to the stage. So Clay Achee is a native of Baton Rouge. He spent a decade refining his creative and collaborative skills in the Louisiana film industry before dedicating his time and attention to conceiving Ziggy, the Junkyard band. First developed as a YouTube channel in 2018, Ziggy and his eclectic gang of kaleidoscope friends eventually moved to LPB in 2021 for the first season of Ziggy's Arts Adventure. Whether creating an entire world or bringing a single character to life, Clay always endeavors to assemble a reality that appears comfortingly familiar while also feeling genuinely magical. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot wait for you to meet Clay because he does so much beyond all of this. It's going to be a great conversation. So let's bring Clay to the stage. Clay, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy that you're here. And again, so happy for your patience and everybody. We were supposed to stream somewhere else. And anyway, we are here. So technology. So let's start with a little fun fact. Clay, can you share a fun fact about yourself, please?
They're all fun. Goodness gracious. A fun fact about me is, you know what? A fun fact that's nobody's going to talk about. I love pirates. I'm really into like pirate lore and pirate history. I like history in general, but no. I think pirates are endlessly fascinating. There's only little bits of history left over because, they lost all their battles and the losers don't get to write history.
Oh,
Yeah.
losers don't get to write history. So do you like So you like the real pirates? It's not like Pirates of the Penzance, like all of that kind of stuff.
I like all that pop culture pirate stuff too.
Okay.
But no, yeah, I've been really into reading a couple of books. The best one I've read so far was Enemy of All Mankind. But they're accounts of what we have, traces of the real stories of what happened to these guys and ladies.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So, okay, so let's dive into the meaty bits of the conversation. So, the first question is, how do you define creativity?
So I love it as a first question, and I've really been thinking about it. The I'm going to take you on a long, rambly story to get you there, which is a good thing on a podcast, thankfully.
Yes.
But like, what it made me think of, because I realized I've been asking this question very sort of studiously and seriously for almost my entire life, and I realized the kernel of it was that when I was in 7th and 8th grade, they had this very short-lived program here in Louisiana, and it was called the Torrance Creative Scholars, and it was this gentleman who had developed a test that he suggested tested people's creativity. And there were several parts of the test, but just to give you kind of like a brief idea of it, because I feel like the idea of testing someone's creativity should feel a little icky. But it was pretty open-ended, and I thought it was really neat. But basically, it would have like pages upon pages of just parallel lines. And they'd say, just finish a drawing. We're not judging how good you're drawing. We want to know how many different things you can come up with. So you draw a pencil out of the parallel lines. Let's say, out of 100 people who take the test, 78 of them draw a pencil. You would score a small amount. But let's say you drew an elephant's trunk out of parallel lines. Well, maybe there's only 3 people who did that. That would be a much larger score. And then, but basically, by accumulating, the more kids they got to take the test, the more accurate the test became, because it was they were looking at all of the answers together, right? Anyway, if you scored high enough on this test, they went and they stuck you in a summer camp. And think about yourself at 7th or 8th grade. You're just becoming yourself. You're at your most insecure, your most fragile, and you've scored very high on this creativity test. And they take you and maybe that one other weird artsy kid at your school, and they dump you all at a summer camp. And they take all the weird artsy kids from all the schools and they put them together. And of course, it was a life-changing, magical experience where we all saw each other for the first time and realized we weren't alone, and it was amazing. But the thing they did with us at the summer camp was sort of try to teach us about how our brains worked. And like the concept of what is creativity was broken down at its most sort of simple for us as the ability to see this and also recognize that it can be that. Right. And so I'll, again, with the pencil as an example, you can see a pencil and you can say that's a writing implement. You can also say it's a back scratcher. You can also say it's an arrow if you have a rubber band and if you were ever in an elementary school and know how to shoot a pencil, you know.
Mhm.
Right. Our ability to see that pencil and then find multiple uses for it is creativity. But then they would teach us like strategies like horizontal versus vertical thinking, and horizontal thinking being when you're trying, no idea is a bad idea. You're just trying to get as many ideas on the table as possible. Let's see what's here. And then vertical thinking is possibly when you take a couple of those best ideas, mush them together, and start building an idea. And at that point, there are bad ideas. You can't be building this and then now, now you want to go do something completely unrelated, right? And so they were trying to sort of teach us about what creativity was and how our brains um, used it as a superpower at this wonderfully formative age. Um, the program didn't last. It's a dream of mine to one day be, wealthy or eccentric enough to bring back this program. But yeah, it was a short-lived program that, I know a few people in town that you went to that weird little summer camp. Oh my God, you went to that weird little. Yeah, we were in Lafayette. We were in the dorms at La. That's University of Lafayette, Louisiana. But yeah, no, and yeah, we'll have a good laugh about this weird little summer camp we went to. But that seed was planted of what is creativity uh, happened there, and thinking about it as our ability to see this as not this, but also that and that and that, sort of as a baseline that then you run, there's so many different ways to dress that and so many ways and times you run into that. um uh Very much as your podcast is about, um I think the arts and creativity, um they mesh into all the parts of our life, and also whether we consider ourselves creative or not. If you're problem solving, then you have to be able to see this as both this but also that. You know
Yes.
what I mean? And so, like, I think that, you know, in today's political climate, one might not think that accountants could be creative, but oh my God, accountants are so creative. Like they make very creative things with numbers. Yeah, that when you break it down to its simplest piece, it's super easy to apply everywhere.
So that was a life-changing, um, opportunity for you,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much so. And for I mean, anybody that I've talked to about it as well, it's a lovely thing to do for kids of that type, particularly at that age, particularly where we were. I know Louisiana. I mean, I think of Louisiana as a deeply culturally rich place, but I know that the South in general is not thought of that way. And oftentimes, because of just economic reasons, we don't get those sorts of programs. And so, the idea that it was there for the window that I was there and that we got it has mattered to all the people I've talked to about it. It was a huge deal.
Well, I think just starting the planting the seed for this conversation, thank you for mentioning, because I was gonna ask you to expand on the horizontal and the vertical thinking, because I think this
Hmm.
really applies to It does, like you said, it applies to
Everybody.
everybody. So everybody listen to this. It's this whole
Hmm.
concept that we apply within every parts of our lives. It's that horizontal, it's across the board, and then the vertical thinking where you I like how you said it's like you're building your ideas, your concepts, and not every idea is a good idea. So it's kind of like just
Yeah, or some
I would
ideas
call
need
it
a
like
lot of
word
work
vomit.
before. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
and that kind of
"Ugh, get it out."
horizontal thinking, I think it's something one of the major things I've learned is not just to have these two sorts of types of thinking, but to communicate where we're at. I have creative partnerships where I can look at them and go, "Oh, no, 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 no. Sorry, man. We're not horizontal thinking anymore. We picked this and now we need to build on this." Just to get people back on the same page as a vocabulary, just to communicate so that other people can go, "Oh, yeah," because we all know the difference between like word vomiting. There are no bad ideas. We are open to your weirdnesses. One of my, I teach these, well, I teach, I, when we're not filming, I teach different classes. One of the classes I teach is a short film making class. And one time we didn't have enough kids show up. And I was in the process of trying to get them to generate the idea for the movie that we were going to make that week. And I had nothing but like three introverts. Nobody wanted to talk, and definitely nobody wanted to talk first. And there was a kid who opened his mouth, and probably too aggressively, I went, "What? Tell me what you were about to say." He was like, "No, no, no, I was just going to make a joke." I was like, "Tell me the joke." He was trying to be respectful. He was just like trying not to be a little jerk, you know? And he was like, "Well, because nobody wants to actually be in the movie, like, I thought it'd be funny if it was like an invisible person." And I was like, "That's a great idea and a good joke," like, but like, he felt like he had a bad idea, and like this wild thing, which was, nobody, there are no ideas right now. That idea is the 100% best idea that's been given, and it's the one we were able to build into a movie. So we went from a very dry horizontal thinking period where everybody was too afraid, in that moment where you really need, there are no bad
Mm.
ideas. Well, I need your weirdness right now. I desperately need the weirdness in that stage of the creative process. Even out of a very dry, the one idea we came up with was an awfully good little movie. It was just like a little day-to-day reality of what it would be like to be an invisible person. He's constantly turning corners and bumping into people. It was hysterical. It was really cute. Um, but yeah, yeah. Sorry, but communicating. Sorry, the point I was trying to make is, I think communicating which step of the creative process that you're in, or making sure everybody who's in a part of that process knows, is both liberating but also a great way to keep people kind of on task.
You keep saying weirdness. So you're using this word a lot in
Yeah,
weirdness. So
yeah.
kind of expand on that for me because it is so as when someone identifies as a creative,
Mhm.
um we often think, we're out of the box. We're kind of like we see ourselves as a little weird. Like
Yeah.
we could be looking at this thing and think of something so far fetched. And then, like a friend when I was young, I remember she asked me, she's like, "Did you like the movie?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure." She's like, "What do you mean you're not sure?" I'm like, "I have to think about it." And then
Uh,
I was like 10, 11. And then about 2 hours later, I called her up and I said, "I liked it." She's like, "You liked what?" I'm like, "I liked the movie." She's like,
the movie that you were just
"You are
asking me about, and
so
I've been thinking
weird."
about incessantly
Like
since. Yeah,
like I needed time to process,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and my brain just kinda thinks differently. So when as you
Yeah.
use the word weird, tell me
Yeah,
about
it's
what that
fair. It's
means to
fair
you.
to ask for a definition of terms here. So, so I think I'm agreeing with you a lot, right? So I think a lot of creative people, on set, we use because I make an art show about art with a bunch of artists. I mean, like when we're filming Ziggy, art intense, right? We call it like the Island of Misfit Toys from the old stop motion Christmas
Rudolph.
movie, Rudolph, right?
Poor Rudolph.
And
Yeah.
we love, yeah. But like I think that's very normal for creative people to sort of go, "Oh yeah, I was just broken in this weird way that made me a little," and like, and we spend a lot of time, I think, our young lives sort of wrestling with that, or trying to define it or dress it up some way. And All of that's useful and part of the process, and I'm not poo-pooing on any of it. But I think it's something all artists struggle with when they're young, and that I've the way I've dealt with it is that I really take pride in and enjoy the weirdness. And so in that way that that's a great Leonard Cohen reference, and nobody's gonna get ring the bells that still can ring. But like in that way that your broken parts eventually become your superpowers, the
Yes.
things that make you
Yes.
weird and different, and whatever it is, But I think that's a lesson that a lot of artists learn after that, which is that sort of you see an artist, we talk about them coming into their own. Oh, and what that is to me is that it's that artist going, oh no, this is how I'm broken, and so with this broken machine makes this specific thing that no other machine could make because of its broken piece, and that suddenly for everybody else it feels like you're confident, you're coming into your own, and for you you're just like, oh no, we just figured out how this piece of broken works. But yeah, that way in which that what makes you weird becomes your superpower because it makes you so individual that we couldn't ask anybody else to do it. That I had a bunch of years ago, a great experience with a producer here in town who was trying to find a little bit of money to turn Ziggy into like a low budget kids movie. He was like, I figured we could make some, find some money for that. And it didn't work out. But along the way, I had gotten kind of paranoid, and I went to him and I was pretty honest. I was just like, what? I don't want you to take this thing. I mean, this is kind of my baby, and I don't want you to take this thing and just get somebody else to direct it or whatever. He
Yeah.
was like, Clay, it's a puppet movie. Who would I hire? And I was like, oh, that's right. And I realized I'd found myself in a sandbox that was so distinctly my own that they couldn't have replaced me. And that it was a really great lesson of that. Oh yeah, I'd gotten into this very weird thing, puppetry, and that enabled me to you know, it was what a weird way to look at job security. I'm not saying there's a lot of job opportunity, but
Yeah.
there's a ton of job security in being the weird puppet guy. Every time somebody says the word puppet, they call you. You know.
Very niche. So here, okay, so I'm going to kind of switch my questions around, but what I might take away from this on multiple levels is embrace your inner weirdo.
Yeah, that's a great way. Yeah.
So across the board, everybody embrace your inner weirdo, because it is your superpower.
Yeah.
So I am going to ask you first, and then we're going to lead into all about Ziggy. I want to know how has creativity helped heal you emotionally, physically, and or spiritually? And then let's lead into, please, about Ziggy and about this playground that we keep mentioning and people may not know about.
Yeah, no, and we're here. So it's a good question. It's one of those that's hard to answer because I feel like how hasn't creativity helped
Mm,
me heal emotionally, physically, or spiritually? You're talking about how did that hammer drive in that nail? You know what I mean? No, that's the tool that I use for that exact thing. So I think early on as a kid, being very ADHD and in school, I know that I was disassociating and I was drawing a lot, doodling, and would have to learn how to sort of study and retain information and stuff in different ways because it just wasn't happening for me there. And so for me, okay, I got to sit still for 8 hours, and it's not something my body, brain, knows or spirit wants. And to be able to disappear into a little world that I was creating, that
mhm,
full of detail and whatever sort of neat things I was into at the time, was like really important just to sort of help me get through school years. And then it was also my first identity in that the teacher would come around, and if they weren't awful, some teachers were bad, they would like snatch it up or tell you to stop or whatever, but oftentimes the teacher would come around and be like, oh my god, Clay, that is so good, you really have god-given talent there. I was at Catholic school, so there was a lot of that was the
mm,
verbiage they preferred. But they that was also the first praise I got. It was how I learned how to describe to other people who I was. I think something that I don't want to say your last guest, but a guest that I listened to that you had recently, the dancing lady, had talked about. It's that way that we sort of shout who we are to the world, and it's
Mm,
also when we intake art, it's the way that other people can shout at us. And if I go, oh my God, I relate to that, then we make those sort of really important human connections. But yeah, a lot of art is just the individual crying out, God, I'm here. Which is why the being yourself and being your authentic weird self is so important, right? Because it's I am here, right? And so if the cry is not unique, then I'm just hearing we're here. But
mm.
yeah. I mean, the healing part of feeling your authentic self and being able to express that, I think is good for anybody. Some people just feel that way because they're able to hang out and drink beers and watch football with their friends. Not smack talking that. Good look, whatever gets you through the day. You know what I mean? But if that you're feeling that sense of community and you're rooting for this thing that you love, and and if that works for you, and then there are some of us that I think have art. We call them artists once it starts getting too individualized. I can't fit you into a group. You must be an artist. There's a lot of labels I think we use to identify ourselves, and the beauty of the artist is that they reduce it down to
But I think what I'm hearing you say too is it's disconnection. When people are feeling disconnected from self, because here you said it's
and
your
each
first
other.
identity being recognized in whatever you do. So if you're a good public speaker, if you're good in science, if you're
Mm,
good in sales, I have a student right
right.
now who I'm like, you're giving me your sales voice right now. And right now is not the time for that sales voice.
Inappropriate
And he stopped
context.
and he goes, I say, you sound like a car salesman. And he's like, I do, don't I? And I'm thinking this is going to serve him so well
Yeah, eventually.
at
That's right.
like in his world outside of these walls and even within the walls, like it will serve him well.
Mm.
But you can kind of see what, he's young. You can kind of see through the BS.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but that's one of his ways of connection. So,
yeah.
and we do need to kind of at times for sanity reasons. I think when you said use the example of go and hang, you're hanging with your friends, which is connection there and building up your reservoir for because we can't be on all the time.
Hmm.
Um, but it's that whole it's all about connection. So we need to kind of disconnect at times, but and
Hmm.
then reconnect. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
Kind of,
I
yeah.
think the art. The interesting thing is the arts give us all of these different ways or options for expression. You know what I mean? If you belong to a sports team or a religion or whatever that group is, and it works for you, and it feeds your soul and stuff. I think that's wonderful. But like there are when I turn to the arts, I basically see sort of an infinite number of ways for us to practice that self-expression in ways that connects us to other people that feel the same, right? And so it's sort of like
It's that
instead of like
community.
finding my sports team and going and finding that community, the arts provides you an opportunity to build, to send out a signal that then
Mm,
welcomes people to you for that community. And so
mm.
it's what a wonderful way to find your people. But,
It's like you
they
when you
picked me.
when when you use that superpower before of the superhero, I just immediately
Yeah,
thought of what, like Batman, put the Batman
yeah,
signal out
with a
and
bat signal. That's right. Oh yeah, our own personal little bat signal.
shooting out. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So, Clay, give us a little bit of a
Ziggy.
roadmap while leading to Ziggy, because Ziggy is like this whole huge topic, everybody on
Mm,
itself. But you've
yeah.
done so many things in this, like, being in a band and
Hmm.
booking bands and teaching and
Hmm.
film and give us kind of like a shortened versions of
Yeah,
it
no, because
and how you
it's a
got to
tough,
where you
long
are,
story,
please.
right? Yeah. I mean, so philosophically, that I think that when I tell like the hour-long version of like how I got here, which occasionally I'm called on to do, I always think that the sort of the theme to my life is try everything. So I grew up in Baton Rouge. I went to film school. I went to art school. I was the weird artsy kid growing up in both elementary and high school, and then went to art school, and then chose film because it felt like the art that combined all the arts. You know, it was costuming, it was three-dimensional and two-dimensional. It was anyway, it was infinitely interesting. And then once I graduated from school, I came back to Louisiana because they had passed the tax incentive program, and they were making movies here. And when I started working in the film industry, I was a production assistant at first, but if somebody was like, "Hey, can you hold a boom pole?" I'd be like, "Sure can." "Hey, can you be on the art department?" "Yep." So I ended up doing a ton of different jobs in the film industry. I was an assistant director. I was a Foley artist. I made like sound effects in a recording studio, like weird stuff, weird little corners of the film industry. So I just tried a bunch of stuff, and then like kind of in that 10 years that I was primarily just working on like low budget movies here in Louisiana. Eventually I sort of like, the way I describe it is I miss making things with my hands. I was a huge fan as a child of puppet stuff, particularly Jim Henson stuff like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. I didn't realize all that stuff was all Jim Henson. Like, well, I love the Muppets and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. And, I grew up on Sesame Street, and, and all of that's Jim,
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I was a little older, but
Yeah.
that's all the sort of stuff I grew up on. So when I kind of had this urge after being a filmmaker or working in film for a long time, like I had this urge to make something with my hands again. I just desired tactile. And I guess I was thinking about my childhood with the Fraggles and stuff. And I found a video on YouTube of a man from New Zealand with a big bushy Gandalf beard who's going to teach us how to make a puppet pattern he found from the missionaries that he knows isn't copyrighted. Let's go. And like half hour later, your life is different. It was weird. You know what I mean? Like he built a puppet, and I went, I can probably do a better one than that. I had to teach myself to sew. But like, so I was just building them as a hobby while I was working in the film industry. And then it turned into like, I was creating puppets for people like as presents. Oh, so-and-so's having a baby. And so we give them a puppet. And then we started, I was like getting married around then and moving away from doing feature films. But I was like maybe directing music videos and commercials every once in a while. But I was like making puppets on the side more and more and more. And eventually I was making these sort of fuzzy monster puppets that were like big plushy toys, but were operatable puppets, and selling them at art markets. And for a long time, like that's how in Baton Rouge, I became known as the puppet guy. Like there are still children that are now in their teens that just be like, "Oh, the puppet guy." Because I was like at every art market or every, farmer's market, or I mean, like wherever they would let us set up a tent and sell puppets. And again, just sort of throughout years, I started developing this idea based on the Voyager. They sent out the Voyager in 1977. They had the big gold records on it. And I was like, Chuck Berry is in outer space. Eventually, some little green alien is going to find Chuck Berry. And like that was still joy springs from my heart at that thought, So Ziggy, the concept of Ziggy was that he was the alien who found the Voyager. He came to Earth looking for Chuck Berry, and I was an alien, and then I realized that he needed friends, and so I was like, oh, he should meet a rock band, if he's coming to Earth to look for rock and roll, and so I built him this sort of like eccentric or eclectic band of musicians, characters, and we were doing this YouTube channel called Ziggy and the Junkyard Band that had dozens of views and dozens of followers. It wasn't very successful, but we were in this punk rock warehouse. It was a warehouse that was divided up into band practice spaces, except for this one long 20-foot wall that they had empty. And he was like, "Yeah, you can set up your puppet stage here if you want." And punks are the most amazing neighbors because they'd all come in and be like, "Oh, are y'all filming today?" "No, we can wait a little while." And they just hang out with us. It was this really neat years where we were figuring out how to film puppets. I was building the puppets better for filming, but I was collecting this group of like, I found a couple of like undergrads at LSU the LSU theater department. One of our puppeteers is a school teacher who just loves puppetry. But I was like collecting these people to me that were just interested in puppets, and we were making this puppet content. And then during the pandemic, I reached out to Louisiana Public Broadcasting, LPB, which is our PBS affiliate, and talked to them about it. I was like, hey, I've got these characters, and I thought maybe we could go on like a tour of Louisiana musical sites or something. I pitched them on something, and they said, yeah, well, that sounds really interesting, Clay. They knew a couple of people at LPB I'd known from working in the film industry, and they were like, no, y'all have to look at this thing he's already making. And they went, oh, it's a kids show. You're just trying to make a kids show. Could you teach we have a grant we could use if you can teach like a school subject. And that was the turning point where I went, oh, like purposefully teach kids things. No, I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to have fun. I can teach art. So that was the big thing. You don't want me teaching you kids math, but I can definitely teach art. But that's when, I got our education advisor, Elizabeth Foos, who involved at that time. And at that point it was like, oh no, like the difference between just making a fun kids show and teaching kids real concepts was a huge leap. And, I think the first 3 seasons that we made of Ziggy's Arts Adventure, which was the show that we eventually developed out of Ziggy and the Junkyard Band. So all of my puppet characters that I was with on YouTube and stuff, they all came over. Ziggy, the whole concept came over. And in fact, we're in LPB, and you can see the set in the background there. Hold on.
I love this. I love this part of being live.
There's no reason we can't. I realize there's no reason we can't do that. So
yeah, audio people don't get this, but yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, guys. So we're kind of in the puppet set that we built, but it's built high up off the ground because the puppets have to be under the puppeteers. Mm-hmm. So the whole set is sort of built up, and there's just sort of all sorts of nooks and crannies that people can pop out of, but this is our general art space that all of the characters live and work in, mm-hmm. At their community art center. Mm-hmm. But basically, we just have this little space alien who came from a planet that doesn't have the arts or never developed the arts, and our band of artists, sort of teach him about different artistic concepts. So every episode has a concept of the day. This season we're dealing with line, dynamics, color, those sorts of like artistic elements. And there's like a special artist of the day every episode. We are sorry, I'm all over the place now. We gotten into Ziggy. There's too much.
It's okay.
But yeah, no. So we filmed and released 2 seasons of Ziggy's Arts Adventure, which are on YouTube now. And then the 3rd season we are like finishing. Like 5 of 10 of the episodes are finished, and the other 5 only need details. So season 3 will be landing on YouTube very, very shortly, which I'm really excited about because after 3 years of doing it, I feel like we finally we're delivering the thing that I think people are going to really enjoy and immediately get. It's going to take very little imagination to try to figure out what we were trying to do this time.
But what I think you're saying so well in all of this is the process. Is that it's a process. And I'm curious, here you started with, you love puppets. You've always been intrigued by puppets. Yeah, so you learned how to create puppets when you had no idea how to create puppets. So you went through that process of learning that. And then you ended up starting off with the creating this character, and then you go to the Junkyard Band, and then someone then is like, oh, someone from the outside is like, oh, you're creating a children's show when it wasn't within your vision, and you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing.
I am actually, aren't I?
Doing, yes. And then you applied all of that. Right. So, and then you're learning and you're growing and so what is the time frame that, now we're 2024 and I know you said COVID. So when did Ziggy and the Junkyard Band, when did that start? Was that really 2020 or before?
no, so Ziggy and the Junkyard Band, like I think that I built the whole thing to a point that we were making like Ziggy and the Junkyard Band YouTube stuff in like 2018.
Okay.
Okay. And like there were weird early things where like every year we have something in Baton Rouge called Surreal Salon, one of the really good local art galleries has this great surrealist exhibition, but they always invite me to do weird puppet stuff. And I remember the Junkyard Band performed a couple of songs at Surreal Salon in 2017. And so like before it was a YouTube channel, I remember I was like trying to put them on Mardi Gras parade flutes and stuff. You know, like I just had this puppet band. Why wouldn't you just put it out there? Again, I had no idea what I was doing yet. But like I know it was 2012 is when I was reading unfilmed by scripts. I was reading scripts for a producer friend of mine, and she was like, "Tell me if any of these are good." And the one good one was this biopic of Carl Sagan that talks about the Voyager. And I know that that was like around 2011, and that was the very first seed for the Alien. And then I was watching Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He's the director who did Amelie back in the 90s. He did
Yes.
a later movie called Micmacs, where there's a like sort of an eccentric group of people who live in a junkyard. You know, and it's a very different movie and not kids, not but like you know, where I can tell you like, okay, no, since 2011, I have been picking up pieces to a puzzle that
Yes.
came together in the pandemic that
Yes.
then radically redefined what we were doing for the next 4 years. You know what I mean? So like what did I say? 2011?
Yes.
Right, you're asking a good question, but so almost 10 years. It's 9 years. Spent 9 years very freely building this thing without anybody asking me anything of me. It was only what I wanted it to be. I built it slowly. It was just this garden. I planted things that I wanted to have grow in it. And then in 2020, you know, we had to invent new characters. We really had to focus what we were doing for the last 4 years to make it watchable. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of time to, you know, that's not even to make it perfect. That's to
Right.
make it where we're like, yeah, I'm ready for people to see this. You know?
Right. But I think it's such a good point because things take time. It's like things do not
Good things take time.
things
Yeah.
don't always and it's like when you're saying planting the seeds, it's like understand it's like we grasp things along the way, they sink in, the seed is planted, and it may not pop up for a
It takes
year, for 10
time.
years, where all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my god, I've been thinking about that for so long. I didn't realize I was thinking about that
It's
for
an
so long, and now I'm
incredible
ready."
it's an incredible indicator of a great idea too, because a great
Yes,
idea will not leave you alone. It
it
will
will
pester the
not.
mess out of you,
Yes,
right? And so
yes.
for a decade now, I've just been pestered by this little alien. Thank God.
Thank
But you know,
God.
like, but you know, it's one of those things that I found that to be a fabulous, fun ideas pop up all the time. They kind of fizzle away, and your brain doesn't chew on them. Like a
Yeah.
good idea it's like a good meal. It gives you something. You want it to last 2 hours. It gives you
Mhm.
something to chew on of substance.
Gives you something to chew on. I have to write that down with substance. So
Yeah,
here
a good idea is like healthy food.
it is. So here this person approaches you. You're in your third season. I want to point out, everybody, that I think what's so interesting too is the things that you're talking about aren't just the principles of design and introducing artists, which is these are all wonderful. It's also entrepreneurship and
Oh yeah,
branding and talking about how
the
to
life of living like an artist.
living
So
like
like,
an artist.
yeah, it was something that came up accidentally in that sort of second development phase where Foos and I were developing it as an educational show that I thought was really interesting and cool. But I kept asking myself the question of like, okay, no, I was the exact demographic human being for this show. Like, what was it about the arts that my heart flew to? What about the arts felt cool to me? I mean, the whole reason that it's a junkyard band is because, like, to me, being in a band that was the coolest thing you could do. You're making music and like that nothing more exciting could be, and so like it it um we were amazed that if you just gave yourself, okay, we have a bunch of artists and all the musicians do kind of other arts, just like most artists do a lot of arts. So all of our characters are just creative people who try things. You know a few of those, I bet. And so we said, okay, you just take those types of characters and you put them in a junkyard, which was the whole point of the junkyard was just a garden of possibilities.
Mm,
You need stuff. You want to build some cool stuff. Well, let's go out in the junkyard and get some cool stuff, right? And so you put the creative people in an environment like that, and then all of a sudden, all of the things that happen were the day to day parts of being an artist. The idea of like, oh yeah, you're in a band. Well, you got to make merch. Let's make some t-shirts and buttons, and or down to like we had Michael Papajohn on the second season. He's a great actor and he's a friend of mine. But he came on and like him talking like to a kid about his process. This happens with a lot of the artists, but once they start I'm like, okay, here's a 9-year-old puppet, but
mm,
talk like you're talking to your 9-year-old self. And like the way people break down what they do, which always
yeah.
feels so complicated. And so once they're talking to that kid and he starts talking about, oh yeah, my process, like, man, sometimes I'll try to figure out like which animal is this character. I'm like, does this character move like a wolf? Does it move like a snake? Like who is the, and like talking about it in those sorts of terms, and all of a sudden it's crystal clear. Of course, yeah, right. Like the ways in which they dive in are anyway, so exciting. Um, sorry, I got excited and lost my
I
train of thought.
know. This is what happens though. It's just we
Yeah,
get
yeah,
so, okay, so what's kind of jumping in my head to ask you is um failure. Do you believe in this word?
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess so. As somebody who sort of like we talked about earlier, embrace weirdo. Like, no, I'm whatever these. I don't mind that it's broken, or I don't need to think of it. I get it. It's my superpower. I don't need to deny its ugly half. And like, I think failure is the ugly half of success, right? And so,
Hmm.
like, whether you want to think the I think there are a lot of different ways to think about success. Or I'm sorry, there's a lot of different ways to think about failure. But to me, the concept of like, no, this is the required learning half of success. If
Yes.
you need to think about it as not failure, fine. It is the required garbage that comes with success. You whatever this is has happening right now is learning,
Yes.
because if you keep doing it, eventually you change and improve and augment, and it's another blessing of the creative mind, right? Is that sometimes we oh, it's the reason why when you're vertically thinking, people want to horizontally think, because we just keep having these great ideas that aren't on topic anymore.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So like
So true.
so in that way that it's a nightmare in that scenario, in failure it's a superpower, because your brain goes, oh well, what if we tried this other thing, which is what you
Mm.
need in that moment. Oh, this didn't work, so what do you need? This needs to be something different. And your brain is, a creative brain. Or and I hate to say that too, because I want to just mention, and it's just particularly when I was talking about the creative scholars in the beginning, I learned there to think of creativity not as a God given gift that God touched certain people on the forehead and gave them creativity, but as a muscle that
Yes.
it's weird muscle, because it's a muscle that we birth. We're birthed from the womb with a really strong muscle. It ain't any of our physical muscles, it's our creativity. And that muscle is strong throughout childhood, and somewhere around adolescence, our brains, if allowed to, will stagnate and we can start losing it. But just like exercise, it is a muscle. It can be exercised by anyone. And no matter what you do, you can get that creative muscles to be a strong working muscle for you. So that, again, when you're in these these times of failure or crises or the need to have problems solved, that muscle is nice and strong and limber and can jump and make the sorts of changes that need to be made.
That is such a great analogy, and it's a problem solving. It's a problem solving, right? And
Yeah.
as you've mentioned many times, it's a process. So it's kind of like in a movie where you have the good character and the bad character that are really the same character, They're
Mhm,
just
mhm.
opposite of one
We're
another.
just
So
shadowy reflections of each
they're
other. Yeah.
shadow. So you need to have, like you said, I couldn't agree more. You need to have the failure. If we were in like La La Land, where oh everything is so great, mistakes are never made. But like that is not realistic, and we wouldn't. There's no learning being done in any of
Right.
that.
So, and that's a thing we gotta remind ourselves is when you're going along and you're in La La Land and you're not making any mistakes, you need to stop and ask yourself why you're doing the same old thing, because you are not stretching, you are not outside of your comfort
Interesting.
zone unless there's mistakes getting unless you know what I mean? Those mistakes are signs that you are making progress. That's you being further along on the path than you used to be. If you were back in the old part of the past, you'd already know how to handle it. It's, mistakes get, the failure happens when you're in the new territory. So like it's a good sign that you're, you know, you may be doing it wrong, but you're where you're supposed to be doing it wrong. You
So
know?
there we go. So you know what? I want to stop and acknowledge, and everybody kind of just think for a minute or a few seconds and be like, are you stretching yourself, or are you not getting out of your comfort zone? So I think
Mm.
that's a really strong takeaway in this is get out of your comfort zone, everybody. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because that's the only place that we
Yeah.
grow. That seriously is where we come up with these ideas, and where people see us, and we're like, oh, I didn't know that that could happen. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, it's a whole thing with electricity. How many times were mistakes made? And people thought,
Yeah.
and flying with the Wright brothers. I love in one of Jen
Oh,
Simpero's books. I love
yeah.
in one of her badass books. She does this whole thing where it's like two people gossiping, and they're like, have you heard about her kids? What do they think they can do? Fly? What are they, crazy?
Those two crazy brothers out in North Carolina. No, yeah, they're out in the country trying to fly.
How do you think
Fly.
she feels as a
Like,
mother? Her two
God, that's an
kids are just
incredible point of
crazy.
view on it. It's so crazy. People gossiping about the Wright brothers. Of course. Of course.
Of course. I have to acknowledge Fallon, who's here. She's saying hello. Hello, Fallon. Thank you for
Oh
being
no, I
here.
wanted to thank Fallon and from Listen to Smile for introducing us and stuff. That's
Yes,
lovely. I
thank you.
appreciate
We
that.
have to do a plug for listening to Smile.
Fallon and Ian from Listen to Smile. Yeah.
Yes, Ian Morrison, Fallon Morningstar. I mean, it is
Yeah.
such a great frequency music, such a great community, and everybody. We will put links
Yeah.
in here for them. You need to hear the music. It is definitely life changing. So I can't believe that we are getting almost to the top of the hour. It's insane.
Mhm.
But I want to kind of touch on also how you, Clay, as a person, besides all these things that we've spoken about,
Mhm.
how do you incorporate creativity into your own world just for you, kind of separately? I know you do
Yeah.
homeschooling, you said,
Mhm.
which I think I see it as a whole creative thing. But for
Yeah,
you
it
to
is.
answer, how do you incorporate more creativity into your own world separate, if not that it's really
It's
separate?
so hard. Again, this is one of those it's so hard to nail down because it feels like the everything for me.
Yeah. Mm.
I I didn't marry an accountant. I married an art degree. And we produced an art kid. And so it's interesting because for us it is sort of the everything. Every meal is an opportunity to create a thing. Um our downtime is often spent creating like okay, this is a good example. If somebody has a birthday in the house, there's only three of us there. If somebody has a birthday in the house and streamers get put up, they never get taken down. Why would they? They're so much fun. They just kind of come down eventually and you sweep them up or whatever. But the decorations sort of stay up, right? And like all of the free time and hobbies are cutting and coloring and like crafting and like
Hmm.
it. It's such an irrepressible energy, and such a satisfying way for me to scratch the itch of living.
Ooh.
It scratches an existential itch for me. This is what I want to spend my time farting around doing. Is being able to just sort of like make and create and put things in the world, decorate the world that I get to experience, and it just feels like such an innate, intrinsic human thing. Um, the one of the most fascinating things I started teaching, one of the classes I started teaching was the history of cinema class. And I thought that I was going to go back to Messinier, who did the photographs of the horses running. And when you put them together, the horses, you could watch them run. That started the modern film movement. But I did some deep diving and found a gentleman who has been looking at the cave paintings in France, which is some of the oldest art that we have, tens of thousands of years old. Some of the earliest art that we had, and what he noticed, because he had an animation background, was that like the bull would have like 3 bulls, shadow bulls behind him, and that the hands would often do the same. And what he realized is if you walk through the cave with a torch, that the way the flicker light would hit the different crevices of the wall, you'd only see one bull at a time. But if you walk past, the bull would move 3 frames, boom, 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 because the light would pass it. And that he was noticing that basically they were doing these weird tricks of animation in cave paintings, right? And so this idea of like the depths in which human beings have been trying to express themselves go back as far as we can reach. You know what I mean? The cave paintings are only as far as we can go because
it's a really interesting point.
That.
Right.
But, thinking about cave paintings as the earliest art, but also thinking about it as that's animation in there. That's kind of a complex mental trick that they're doing, all to go, look at how the hunt went today, or to tell their stories, and like
telling stories.
That just feels so innate and so human that to say, how does creativity personally, affect my life? I was like, oh God, like it's in everything. Yeah,
it's in everything.
It's for all of us. For all of us, I think it can be unleashed.
It is. It's so funny that you mentioned the streamers. Personally, in our family, what I did for a long time was when it was somebody's birthday, especially the kids, I'd go in and decorate their room. And there'd be streamers. I'd go to the dollar store. I'd have signs hanging on their door in the bathroom. I would do it when they weren't there so they could kind of open their door and have a surprise. There'd be balloons, there'd be whatever. And kind of when they got older, they were like, Mom, could you please? I love it, but it's so much to clean up. Like I had to clean everything up, and could we just not? So I was like, fine. So then I limited it to the door. I was like, well, I have to do something.
No, but that's a great way to do it. Decorate the door.
So we'll decorate the door so we don't have streamers hanging from the fan, and then they're just going around and like shooting off and making a mess. But yeah, that just kind of brought up that memory when you said that.
Oh, that's great.
But I think it's incorporating those moments, and I think a takeaway with that is because you said it's fun. It's kind of like make things fun, ladies and gentlemen, where you can. It's really in every moment that you can make something.
The way I like to say it is, there's no reason this can't be fun. To remind yourself that, like, no, whatever you're doing now, you don't have to go do the fun thing. Whatever you're doing right now, there's a creative, fun approach to it. There's no reason this can't be fun. I'm too militant with myself.
So as we wrap this up, before you tell people how to connect and find your show and find you, it's a little repetitive, but I want to see if you're going to add anything more to this on why do you think creativity is important?
I had an answer to this one. This is good. So the why to me is that it'll bring us right back to the very beginning of it could be this, a thing can be this or that. And the why to me is that it is the origin of all new ideas. The only reason we have anything new, progress itself requires creativity. It requires that binary of it can be this or that. Actually, more than binary, right? Because this, that. But ultimately, it's how all new things happen. So I, couldn't encourage it enough for everyone. Let's get some new things.
Whew. Okay, Clay, how can people connect with you?
So on Instagram, I'm Ziggy and Clay, as well as on Facebook. And then our YouTube page is now Ziggy's Arts Adventure. which you can watch seasons 1 and 2. But uh, this month we should be releasing episodes of season 3. Start
And,
releasing episodes of season
and
3.
how many episodes are in a season?
10. We did 9 the first time, 10 the second time, and 10 the third time. So we're 10 episodes per season roughly for now.
So before we say goodbye, is there anything else you feel, any final words, anything you feel like you forgot to say?
Oh no, so many things. I'll think of all sorts of things for the rest of the day. That's what I'll be thinking about. Things I wish I'd said. No, but this was absolutely lovely, and like, thank you so much for wanting to talk to me about this stuff. And it, you know, let's end on it's fun. The idea that I've gotten myself into a position where I get to think about creativity and the arts with creative, artsy people all the time, and that people calling me from other places just so that we can talk about creativity is like the greatest feeling in the world. This I you know it's the very bullseye on the center of the fun target, is where I get to live. And it's just joyful. So thanks for hanging out and talking to me with me
Well,
about it.
well, thank you for coming into the space and expanding the definition of what creativity means, because that's what this space is all about. And your passion and your ideas and everything that we've just discussed is just like, boom, it just shoots through the screen. And I cannot wait to follow more of what you're doing and just to connect more and just support everything that who you are. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Hollis. Thanks to anybody watching and listening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we wish you, wherever you are listening in the world, we so appreciate you. We wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening. And thank you so much. And I am going to send Clay to the back for just a minute. And we're going to say goodbye. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. If today's conversation resonates with you, please like, follow, share, and please spread the goodness. We need to get the word out there. And remember, if you're feeling stuck in your personal or professional life, check out our Get Unstuck membership at imcreativephilly.com. As a creativity doula, I'm here to help you bring your ideas to life. And until next time, please explore the possibilities, express yourself, and take time to expand yourself by doing something just for you. And as Clay said, make it fun. So, wishing you a wonderful day, everybody. Goodbye.